My name is Martin Kuhn, and I'm the Associate Vice President, Supply Chain and Head of the Global Deliver Organization for MSD Worldwide. And a little bit about who is MSD from a global perspective. It's a 100-year-old company that has revenues of around $47 billion, and we specialize in biopharmaceuticals. This includes vaccines, and I'm sure there's lots of questions around what's going on with COVID, which probably not today, but another day you can ask me those questions, as well as obviously a lot of primary care, hospital, antimicrobial, women's health, dermatology. The scope of the product is very, very broad. So quickly, the classic picture of what a pharma supply chain looks like is a very simple picture of excipients, active pharmaceutical ingredients getting manufactured, shipped out through wholesalers to whether it's a drug chain, wholesaler through the pharmacy or the hospital. In reality, it's a lot more complex. And when you look at what actually happens with inside MSD, just from the site where we manufacture the product, ignoring the external supply chain, it goes through a lot of hands and a lot of partners to actually make it that journey from plant to patient. And that's fraught with all sorts of transport complexities, warehousing, distribution points, and so on. If you actually pull this chain apart and actually look at it from a product perspective, it looks more like this. And this is a single product within the Merck chain where we start with our external suppliers, which are the gray bubbles. And you can see they're interspaced within the steps of the process, not just at the beginning. And all the way through the different stages of manufacture through to the final layer, which is in-market DCs. And you can see Australia at the top. And this is one product. So you need to multiply this chain by 90 products to get a true picture. And these are just the inventory holding or transformation point, not necessarily any of the transportation points. So when you actually look at the total network that you're trying to manage, you're dealing with literally thousands of nodes. And when you go back to Richard's sort of introduction picture with all the spreadsheets, to attempt to do this in a spreadsheet, you break Excel or you break a lot of people. Or it takes a forever amount of time. And that's something that in today's world is just not feasible. In fact, in this level of complexity, manual systems simply fall over. Even your traditional ERP tool, whilst it can capture sort of a manufacturing node well from a demand, replenishment, supply kind of perspective, it is very weak at trying to manage this level of complexity across all the nodes and all the interplay that was mentioned, whether it's demand, capacity, constraints, and other elements. So obviously when something good or bad happens, and Richard gave that long list of events, it has enormous consequences to how you have to do your planning. Replanning or changing what you produce, changing what you ship, obsolescence of inventory. Every change has a cost, whether it's factories from being rescheduled and so on. Everything then translates to an increase in the cost of your supply chain. And obviously, you want to manage that. And the issue is that these things happen every day or even multiple times a day that you've got to adjust your plans. So unless you have a capability to rapidly replan, these issues will constantly blindside you, or you'll have to deal with that chaos firefighting expedite universe that many of us have lived in. So how do you replan a network with thousands of moving parts? So COVID happened, started this year, and like the picture is, it was a domino effect. It created a completely different change on our demand profile. we had an amazing need for antivirals, anesthetics for people on ventilators. The sales and demand for diabetes products, because people were not particularly worried about their diabetes or not able to access pharmacies or scripts, went down. Sites had to shut down because people were locked up. Transport stopped, planes were grounded, factories halted because we couldn't get PPE to the operators to actually perform the tasks they do. New rules were mandated for safety, but you still had to get products through, because at the end of the day, pharmaceuticals are one of those special products that if you don't get it right, people's health suffer or even die. So what happened in the last 10 months? And I think this is where we get to the real examples of what is going on. So firstly, it's kind of the punchline. We have a measure that we use, line item fill rate, across the organization. And you can see from the lines, it didn't really change that much from fourth quarter 2019 to our current quarter. So the show went on. We were able to deliver our product. In fact, our customers, whether they were hospitals, governments, pharmacies or wholesalers, were kind of surprised that we had stock available. And the three features of how we managed this was scenario planning, our ability to have distribution, logistics, and resilience. And we had that real-time visibility. Those three elements were really crucial to how we managed the entire period. And I'll go through these three in a little bit more detail. So first of all, scenario planning. When COVID-19 started and we sort of first heard about the issues that were escalating in Wuhan, we have the lockdown starting. So immediately we needed to understand, well, who are our suppliers in China? How are they going to be affected? Optimistic, realistic, pessimistic. What does this mean for our ability to supply? So very quickly we were able to look at, okay, our supplier network, their location. We could plot them, put them in a 200-kilometer radius of Wuhan, and figure out all these suppliers, what do they do for us, whether it's supply of clinical materials, PPE, raw material ingredients, or any other element, and then convert that into a replanning for each of our scenarios. In other words, okay, what if it was 1 month delay, 2 month delay, 6 month delay in supply? Where would we run out? Where would we have to reschedule? Where would we have to stop or reallocate? And running those scenarios, obviously, in a manual world is frankly impossible. So very quickly, within a few days, we had a plan of how to manage what decisions we had to make, who we had to contact to try to drive a stability in our supply chain, so that we didn't effectively push people to make stuff we didn't need, or vice versa, plan for capacity that we didn't have. The other part is about distribution logistics resilience. Data visibility is super important in that once you know what your routes are, you know what your expected performance is, you have to be able to see whether or not you're actually performing to that. So from a resilience perspective, it's about looking at your historic data to understand where things are not performing. So if you have reliable lanes, you have unreliable lanes. So the lane on the far right is not reliable. It's versus plan versus actual, it's not there. Constant delays. So you investigate, you change, you adapt, you modify that particular lane, you change the carrier, you change the mode, you change the route. And you need to be able to drill down deeper into how each of these, it's not just the total time, it's actually the actual leg that's driving the problem. So this level of data visibility enables you to make decisions proactively to modify and make a more resilient chain. Now, that data itself can drive a more almost an AI type of heuristic approach, where you can convert that information into which region, which product, which carrier. So you can be very clear about what changes you make in your supply chain. And this is, when you think about your concurrent planning, when you think about the data that you set up, a plan is a plan. Until you execute that plan, you don't understand just how good that plan was. So there's a cycle involved of planning, understanding your variability, and improving your ability to deliver to your plans. So that creates that stability. And modifying your plans to understand whether it's an internal production site or an external delivery is critical. And that creates that resilience, because you're able to keep improving and removing effectively the weak chains in your processes. The visibility is not just historic, it's real time. So when you think about real-time visibility, there's a lot of devices out there. You know, the guy, Jimmy, brings your bottle of wine to your front door, you see the truck arriving on your app. Great. But that level of sophistication applies into operations. So you can get information about where you've got weather problems, where you've got shipments sitting, where you've got actual things in transit, what temperature they're actually at during their travel, which leg of the journey they're on, what's the predicted time of arrival. All these things feed back into your planning tools as well, because if you can see that delivery is coming, or it's late, or it's early, it means you can adjust your plan very quickly to take advantage of it. You know, a lot of the discussion is around negativity in terms of impacts, but there are just as many opportunities that present themselves. And if you're able to be responsive, you can take advantage of those opportunities. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the future. So it's not just about reacting to bad news, it's about being able to react to good news and create value for both your customers and your organization. All the things I just talked about in terms of real-time visibility feed back into your system. These are rapid response screenshots. So effectively what you end up being able to do, and this is the magic of the real-time picture, is that you know exactly where your inventory is at a top high level. You can drill down to exactly what inventory you have, where it is by product. These are a series of Merck products. I won't explain what they do. They happen to be in Japan. And you know exactly whether you've got potentially a little bit excess stock, whether you've got low stock, whether you've got demand at risk, actually rebalancing based on information of exactly what was made, when it's to be delivered, because all the dates in the system keep getting updated. And that gives you that ability to make the right decision as fast as possible, so that at the end of the day, you end up with the right inventory in the right place. Of course, it has to come together somewhere. And this is where putting it all together, you have to have a planning organization that pulls together all those information, whether you call it a control tower, whether you call it a planning hub, or just your planning department. The name is not important. What they do is in that they bring together that information and can direct or orchestrate the activities across the supply chain. And within the last these are some examples on the right, over the last 10 months this year, we've successfully redirected vaccines from Japan to Germany because we were able to see the demand changes. We had resilient supply chains. We were able to put 500,000 doses of a flu vaccine, even in the middle of a COVID crisis with restricted transport. to Germany in a couple of weeks. We were able to respond to a need in China regarding antifungals directly to hospitals. We were able to send anesthetics from Europe to Brazil as their situation darkened and they had more and more people going onto ventilators. And it all happened without chaos or churn. It happened because we knew exactly what inventory was available. We knew what we could spare from one market to another market. We understood how to move things around. And when you move stuff about, it causes a lot of replanning activity. In fact, the process of having a live system effectively enables you to do it real time. So your most important activity is to understand and make decisions rather than clean data in some kind of database or spreadsheet. So what it leads to by being able to have that ability to scenario plan, having the resilience in your distribution and logistics, and having that real-time visibility brought together is that you create a whole host of benefits for the organization. I mean, obviously, the obvious one is around inventory discards and being able to deliver customers sales so you don't lose sales. But you have lots of other benefits around, your insurance costs, your reputational damage, that sort of expediting premium from transport, even the disruption in your operating facilities where you're constantly asking for changes that impacts efficiency and capacity utilization, or even disposal as a result of poor decisions. All those things roll together when you think about what happens when you get those three elements of scenario planning, supply chain resilience with end-to-end visibility together. It does make a huge difference.